Good morning, 10:05. I'd like to call this meeting of the House Finance Committee to order. And I'd like to start with our Senior Committee Legislative Assistant, Lori Smith, calling the roll.
Chairman Samuelson,
Here.
Rep. Abney,
Vote by designation.
Sapita Freites, Fleming, Gallagher, Gungauer,
Vote by designation.
Harris, Inglis,
Here.
Kajewski,
Vote by designation.
Scott,
Vote by designation.
Venkat,
Vote by designation.
Webster. Gosh. Waxman,
Here.
Rep. Waxman is online and will be voting by designation.
Webster,
Vote by designation.
Chairman Griner,
Here.
Devanzo,
Vote by designation.
Fritz, Gatos, Jones,
Vote by designation.
Kephart, Kutz,
Vote by designation.
Mako,
Vote by designation.
Rossi,
Vote by designation.
Rinkavich, Stamba,
Vote by designation.
Stender.
And for the record, Representative Webster is here. All members accounted for. We have 3 items on the agenda,
Rozzie's here.
and Representative Rossi is here for the record. We have 3 items listed on today's agenda. We have votes on House Bill 500, House Bill 1189, and a discussion on House Bill 1306, sponsored by Representative Fleming and Kerwin, to get some discussion on that bill for a possible vote next week on House Bill 1306. I would like to start with the discussion of the bill sponsored by Representative Bizzarro, House Bill 1189. And I'd like to bring up, I move to bring up House Bill 1189. I'd like to call on our committee senior legislative executive director, Mark Foreman, for a description of House Bill 1189.
House Bill 1189 would raise the threshold for the PA Treasury to automatically return unclaimed property from $500 to $10,000.
Thank you. I'd like to open this up to discussion. I would like to start with, we had a public hearing on this 2 years ago, this Finance Committee, and we advanced legislation which ultimately became part of law. We voted it last year, where the Treasury Department is allowed to distribute up to $500 of unclaimed property, even if the person has not signed up, which was the previous requirement. Treasury has some safeguards in place to make sure that the money is going to somebody who is a current Pennsylvania resident with a current address, and it's for amounts up to $500. In practice, they have started that this year. They started a pilot program late last year, as we discussed in the budget hearing in February, and they are planning to work through all of the claims of under $500. I think they're targeting between $100 and $500. There's about 68,000 properties that fall in that category. It has to be a single person, not for married couples, not for property that has multiple owners, but they believe they can work through all 68,000 current claims by the end of the year. If we raise the threshold to $10,000, there's about 12,000 additional claims that could be addressed in this way, and they could work with those. So that's the proposal that Representative Bizzarro has introduced. I'd like to open it up to the committee members for further discussion. Representative Webster.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very brief, but I'm absolutely in favor of anything we can do to make the unclaimed property scenario work better for Pennsylvanians. And I'll just mention my personal scenario. After serving in the U.S. Air Force, I came home to Pennsylvania, and apparently with a new address, Pennsylvania then claimed my credit union accounts in other states. No reason, no why, but all of a sudden, where I did my banking was part of unclaimed property in Pennsylvania. And so I would be on a little mission to say, what the heck are we doing? And if we can get property that we know belongs to a Pennsylvanian out of this system and returned to a Pennsylvanian, then I'm all in favor.
And we have some documents submitted by the state treasury to the committee members talking about this. Many other states have this money match program, and there's a lot of other unclaimed property beyond what would be targeted by the money match program. Annually, they receive about $500 million of unclaimed property, and they're trying to focus on the 2024 unclaimed property. If they had this system in place, they could go back and work on 2023 and 2022 and prior years. Any other committees members would like to discuss House Bill 1189? I'd like to call for a vote. Are there any negative votes on House Bill 1189? Seeing none, House Bill 1189 passes the Finance Committee and is reported unanimously. Second on the agenda, I know we have some guests here to have a discussion on a bill I'd like to bring up next week. It's sponsored by Representative Fleming, Representative Kerwin, and we also have a guest testifier, Sam Miller from Lower Paxton Township. I'd like to give the opportunity to Representative Fleming and Representative Kerwin to discuss this bill and also then call on Sam Miller. We did vote on this bill in the previous session, but I wanted to give the committee an opportunity to discuss. We'll start with Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. I just want to say briefly that I appreciate Representative Kerwin's partnership on this. We both represent Lower Paxton Township, and this was introduced, and I also want to thank my colleague, Rep. Stender, who was a very capable co-prime sponsor last year as Representative Kerwin was deployed serving our country. So I'll kick it over to Representative Kerwin to get us started and kind of tee up this issue of the situation that we've had in Lower Paxton Township.
Thank you, Rep. Fleming. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Greiner, as well as members of the House Finance Committee. I want to thank you all for the opportunity to discuss House Bill 1306 this morning, and I also want to thank my colleague, Rep. Fleming, for working on this initiative with me, as well as Lower Paxton Township Assistant Manager Sam Miller for being here with us today to advocate for this important bill. It's not a secret that volunteer organizations throughout the Commonwealth, especially volunteer fire companies, are facing recruiting and retention issues, severe recruiting and retention issues, including right here in Dauphin County. Exempting length of service awards from income tax obligations is a way to incentivize volunteer service and reward those who have served and protected our community on a volunteer basis. The vast majority of Pennsylvania's over 2,000 fire companies are volunteer-based. Throughout our Commonwealth, volunteer fire companies choose to offer length of service award programs to volunteers who remain with a fire company for a dedicated amount of time. These programs provide retirement pensions for volunteers who meet minimum service requirements. I think it's important to note that under Pennsylvania law, contributions made by a fire company to a volunteer firefighter through a length of service award program can be considered compensation and taxed as income. So that means that a volunteer firefighter may owe personal income tax on these contributions despite their volunteer service. I believe those who volunteer their time to fight fires, protect our community, and risk their lives while providing vital emergency services should not have to pay income tax on length of service awards, especially before they are eligible to receive any payout. Again, this legislation is going to be a helpful tool, in my opinion, in recruiting and retaining volunteer firefighters, as well as rewarding volunteer service in our Commonwealth. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak on this bill today, and I look forward to this legislation being considered by the committee for a vote. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd also like to call on Sam Miller, who was with us at our previous hearing a couple years ago. Sam Miller is the Assistant Township Manager and Finance Director of Lower Paxton Township. Mr. Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Chairman Samuelson, Chairman Greiner, and those members of the committee. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you here today on this subject matter again. When it comes to the discussion about LOSAP, and Representative Kerwin did an excellent job of introducing that, I will give just a small overview to keep it simple, but certainly make myself available for more specific discussions as need be. But I want to thank Representative Kerwin and Representative Fleming for coming together in this bipartisan, apolitical effort. Tremendous to have both sides come together to bring this to the attention of the House and the state overall. And I certainly need to give notice to our former Board of Supervisor member and retired U.S. Army military official, Norman Zumas, who was really the catalyst behind why we're here today, to support those individuals that are giving dedicated volunteer service year after year, and this small benefit that they can receive as a recognition to them for those dedicated years of service. So volunteers are really those community backbones for us in relation to fire service. They help keep our costs as taxpayers very low. The volunteer network has had significant strain over the last 30 years, from about 300,000 members to about 30,000 members. It's still an area where the township focuses as the key supplement to protecting public safety and value within our community. And this benefit that we have for these individuals is one that has given some question as far as taxability. This was found out specifically when we had made administrative changes in our program and we started to have a new trustee make the payments. They agreed that it should be reported under a different basis. The issue at hand is the IRS does not provide definitive guidance on how these payments should be reported. So some individuals will report those as compensation-like payments, others will report them as pure compensation, and others will report them as non-employee compensation. So a wide variety. At the end of the day, we come before you to ask the simplicity to overlook the lack of guidance from IRS to establish a state threshold to say that length of service award program awards that are given to dedicated volunteers based on years of service and reaching dedicated age are hereby not taxed for Commonwealth purposes. And certainly can provide any additional information specific to our situations, and we certainly thank you for that time and consideration here today.
And Mr. Chairman,
Thank you.
yes, if I can just summarize. First of all, I want to commend Lower Paxton Township for taking this step. As Representative Kerwin said, we have challenges in terms of recruiting volunteer fire personnel, and a LOSAP program is a great, length of service award program is a great incentive to continue with the fire company and continue saving taxpayer dollars, quite frankly, by lengthening the amount of time that a service stays in volunteer status. It's a tremendous cost to taxpayers in a municipality. Or it's a tremendous savings to taxpayers in the municipality to have a volunteer service as opposed to a paid service. And as Mr. Miller said, we're just looking to clear up confusion. I mean, we can't have a situation where one accountant is saying it should be classified as this and another is saying it should be classified as that. So we are coming before you to clear up confusion. And I do want to say, I know Representative Mike Jones had some good feedback on the bill last time. I'm still open to that if that's a concern in terms of capping it. So we're very, very clear that this doesn't have a, you can only it can only be capped at a certain amount, so we don't have people stocking away savings and just because they happen to be a volunteer, they can. There's a loophole in this program. We want to make it as airtight as possible. So I'm certainly I'm certainly open to that feedback from Representative Jones if that is still the case. So thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Greiner, for bringing this up and allowing us to talk about this today.
Thank you. I'd like to open it up to discussion, and Chair Greiner has a comment.
I think I'm the one that asked the question that spurred on Representative Jones's question, and I'm going to ask it again, I think. I think I had two questions last time. Was the dollar value in your municipality, how much we're talking? And I think this follow-up question is the same one I had 2 years ago, was how many municipalities in the state have this? They were my two. And then Representative Jones followed up when after my question, and he probably will this time. So if you can, if you can maybe just refresh my memory on those.
Thank you, Chairman Greiner. Yes, for the township itself, we provide a benefit of $10 per month per year of service up to a maximum of $250. So the maximum any individual will receive under this program is $3,000 and the equivalent of about $93 in PA tax. As Representative Kerwin had noted, there are some statistics about nationwide LOSAP programs. However, through working with various state agencies, including the Fire Commissioner's Office, there are no state statistics that really focus on how many programs are out there. The ones we have spoken to are at equivalent or lesser version that I've seen than ours, which really sets ours as somewhat of a cap in some of those comparisons, or very similar structure. I've not seen any, even moving into New York and New Jersey, where these are exceptionally prevalent, where we're talking, 5, 6 figures of any discussion.
All I'm going to say is I think I like Representative Jones's amendment. That's the accountant in me and a CPA, because you'll find ways to avoid taxes. And I think you could set up a program such before to shelter more money, and I think we should close that. I'm just saying the fact that it's there, somebody may try to take advantage of it. So I think an amendment probably is not a bad idea.
As a fellow CPA, I think we're amenable to what has been proposed.
And I'd like to work with Chair Greiner on that amendment. We did have another amendment last time putting a minimum age in the bill of 65 years old. I don't think we have that in the bill right now, so we may need that amendment again. I do have one question. The tax that people are facing sometimes, is it on the front end when they earn the length of service agreement, or is it on the back end when they're actually receiving it years later?
It is on the back end when they receive. It's not actual reportable compensation to them when they start to get physical checks.
It doesn't kick in until they start to get the checks?
That's correct.
Okay. I should have said for the record that Representative Mike Jones is present, Representative Thomas Kutz is present, Representative Perry Stambaugh is present, and I just wanted to state that for the record, there are several meetings going on at the same time in the Capitol. I have a list, and there's about 7 or 8 meetings going on this morning. Any other questions for members? Representative Jones.
Thank you to both chairmen, and you both captured it. I don't really need to speak, but I did occur to me, for newer members and or those in the audience, there's no opposition to the concept here and what you're doing in Lower Paxton. It's just sometimes things can have unintended consequence. So the spirit of this, I would be shocked if everyone here doesn't wholeheartedly support. We love our volunteer firefighters, but you can't be given, and I know, you can't be given $50,000 service awards for a 5-year anniversary, because that's a backdoor way of, that's called a paid fireman at that point, which we have a lot of those. So that's not the spirit of it, but that's all we're really talking about, some kind of guardrails there, and I'm sure we'll work through that. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Jones. I have a question from Representative Rapp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's less a question and more a compliment. I represent a part of the city of Philadelphia where we don't have volunteer firefighters, but I've learned about the importance of volunteer firefighters, and it's one of the few professions that everyone seems to have a deep affection and respect for. And as a state lawmaker, I get to learn about things that happen well outside of my comfort zone, well outside of my district or municipality, and so I always learn. So I believe I was a strong yes last time. I also appreciate the constructive feedback in terms of guardrails, particularly from those folks, colleagues who have different expertise, whether they're accountants or former firefighters or whomever, that make these bills better. But I just wanted to say in this moment, when we deal with so much polarization, to see bills like this that not just help firefighters, but help whole communities, that's when I'm reminded why I love my job. So I'm really hopeful that this bill not only passes out of this committee, but is enacted into law, because this is a good bill. So thank you for all of your efforts.
Thank you. And Representative Fleming?
Thank you, Chairman. Just for some additional context, Lower Paxton Township, by population, is the largest municipality in Dauphin County, with about 60,000 residents, and it's covered by 3 volunteer fire departments: Colonial Park Fire Department, Lingelstown Volunteer Fire Department, and Paxtonia Volunteer Fire Department. So we're talking about 3 volunteer companies who are covering a lot of area and doing great work in order to do that. So I really appreciate the feedback and the permission structure to talk about our bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Fleming. And thank you for your testimony. Thank you, Mr. Miller, for being here. Thank you, Representative Kerwin. So I will schedule this for a vote next Wednesday, May 14th, 10 a.m., and our amendment deadline will be 1 o'clock the day before on May 13th. So we will work with Representative Fleming, Representative Kerwin, and Chair Greiner to come up with those 1 or possible 2 amendments. Thank you, members. Next, I'd like to move on to House Bill 500, the EDGE tax credit package, economic development for a growing economy. I'd like to start with our senior committee executive director, Mark Foreman, giving a summary of the bill. We did have a public hearing last week on May 1st about the various components of House Bill 500.
House Bill 500 updates the economic development for a growing greener economy, Pennsylvania Economic Development for a Growing Economy, PA EDGE tax credit package, including the Reliable Energy Investment Tax Credit, the Pennsylvania Milk Processing Tax Credit, Clean Hydrogen Hubs Tax Credit, Semiconductor Manufacturing Tax Credit, and Sustainable Aviation Fuel Tax Credit.
Thank you. We have a number of amendments filed to this bill, and I'd like to start with Amendment 543. I also should make a motion as chair to call up House Bill 500 and then call up Representative Rincavige's amendment, Amendment 543, and call on Representative Rincavige to, for some discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In October of 2021, the good folks in Northeast Pennsylvania learned about a transformational project that was coming to Nanticoke and Newport Township. A Texas-based natural gas company called Nacero was coming to Northeast Pennsylvania to create 3,500 construction labor jobs and nearly 800 remaining jobs in my backyard, revitalizing coal-stripped lands that nothing you could do anything with, and providing opportunity and family-sustaining jobs to the people in my district. Now, what folks don't really talk about with that proposal is the legislation that made that possible. Back in 2022, Act 66 was a bipartisan-led bill that was signed into law under Governor Wolf, and it made the framework to allow the project like Nacero to come to Northeast Pennsylvania. What House Bill 500 today proposes is removing the local resource manufacturing tax credit that made that natural gas plant in my district possible. This is already existing law that we are discussing removing and redistributing to other parts of Pennsylvania. This bill, Act 66 of 2022, that we're looking to change here today in House Bill 500, it brought together industry and labor in a historic way that had never happened in nearly 30 years. And it came at a time with AI and all the natural gas that we need to be producing to create energy. We have rising energy rates in our backyard. We need to be investing in energy. We don't need to be picking winners or losers and taking these credits away. So I'm troubled here today because House Bill 500 takes away that incentive for the good folks back at home for me. Now, I had some discussions with the makers of the bill, and it seems that we have come to an agreement that we are going to work toward a better amendment for when this comes to the House floor. So while I'm troubled, I'm going to be withdrawing that amendment today with the understanding that we're going to fix this as it goes to the floor so that we're not repealing hard-fought legislation that is already in place that is important to the workers and families back in Northeast Pennsylvania, that is important to revitalizing Northeast Pennsylvania. So I withdraw that amendment, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Rinkavich. I'd now like to move to bring up House Bill 554, Amendment 554, sponsored by Representative Ingalls. And I'd ask our committee Senior Executive Director, Mark Foreman, for a description.
The amendment would lower the it would lower the minimum wattage requirement from 100 down to 50.
From 100 megawatts down to 25 megawatts. And I'd like to call a discussion.
I'll keep this very brief. Thank you, Chair. But the amendment is in the spirit of EDGE 2.0, where we are lowering the thresholds of this tax credit, hoping that more entities will take advantage of the tax credit. So lowering it for new facilities and existing ones that are making modifications, both of those qualify easier, for these tax credits by lowering the thresholds from 100 megawatts to at least 25. And as I said, it's in the spirit of EDGE 2.0 that we are trying to have these tax credits be taken advantage of more. So we're seeing these investments, and that's exactly what this amendment does. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Ingalls. And we did have some discussion in our hearing last week. I would like to note for the record that Representative Scott is here. We had some discussion last week that if we lowered it to a lower threshold, there would be more opportunity for projects to participate. I appreciate you offering this amendment. I do want to open it up to any other committee discussion on the Ingalls amendment. Are there any negative votes on Amendment 554 Ingalls? Let me ask for a roll call vote on Amendment 554.
Chairman Samuelson,
Yes.
Rep. Abney,
Yes by designation.
Sapita Freites, Fleming, Gallagher, Gungauer,
Yes by designation.
Harris, Inglis, Krajewski,
Yes by designation.
Rab, Scott,
Yes.
Venkat,
Yes by designation.
Waxman,
Present online and yes by designation.
Webster,
Yes.
Chairman Griner,
Yes.
DeVanzo,
Yes by designation.
Fritz, Gatos, Jones, Kephart, Kutz,
Did he step out? Yes by designation. He was here and left.
Mako,
Yes by designation.
Rossi, Rinkavich, Stenbach,
Yes.
Stender,
24 in favor, 1 opposed. Amendment 554 is adopted. 25-1. Next, I'd like to call up the first of my own amendments, Amendment 555, and ask Mark Foreman to give a description of the amendment.
This amendment would give early-stage semiconductor businesses 3 years to make the initial $3 million investment in research and development required under the legislation.
Thank you. Since our hearing on Monday, I got some feedback from some of our semiconductor economic development organizations. And the requirements of this bill, we have $8 million that would be for most semiconductor projects, $2 million for early stage semiconductor projects. We have a requirement that the early stage companies have $3 million in research and development over 1 year. The request is to allow them to spread that over 3 years. So if a company has had $3 million of R&D in the previous 3 years, they would be eligible to be considered for an early stage semiconductor tax credit. Do we have any discussion from members of the committee? Do we have any negative votes? Seeing no negative votes, House Bill Amendment 555 passes unanimously. Then I'll take the chair's prerogative and go to my second amendment, which is Amendment 567. I'd ask Mark Foreman, our executive director, to give a description of Amendment 567.
Amendment 567 clarifies an electric generating facility that is being restarted qualifies for the credit only if the first substantial step of the restart commences after the effective date of the bill, and defines a substantial step as submitting a letter notifying the Nuclear Regulatory Commission with their intent to restore operation.
Thank you. We had some discussion during the committee meeting that the tax credits contemplated in House Bill 500 would not be applicable to the 3 Mile Island project, which is already, some of the early steps have already been taken, including that letter to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. This would put in the bill a sentence or two just to ensure that what we were told in the committee meeting actually takes place, and this would not apply to 3 Mile Island and their currently announced project. Any other discussion from committee members? Representative Greiner.
I just want to confirm, I don't have a problem with the amendment, but are we just talking 3 Mile Island, or are we talking other projects that perhaps have been started? You know what I'm saying? I would think it would be across the board, I would hope.
The intent of this is to only cover 3 Mile Island because we believe they're the only one in the state that would meet that criterion, that they've already sent the letter to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. We don't know of other projects that would fit in that category.
Understood. Thank you. I mean, yeah, that's like goes back to the thoroughness. Do we need to make it all inclusive within the amendment? I don't know that. I mean, I'm just throwing that out as I don't have a problem with the amendment, though. All right. Thank you.
Any other discussion from committee members? Roll call. Any negative votes on Amendment 567? That amendment passes unanimously. I would next go to Amendment 582, sponsored by Representative Rabb. And I'd ask our senior committee executive director to give a description of Representative Rabb's amendment.
Amendment 582 would establish a new geothermal electricity tax credit.
And I'd like to call on Representative Rabb for a description for discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll keep this brief. This amendment would just make investment in geothermal explicit, while it is already technically a part of HB 500 in terms of clean energy. Given the vast potential of this energy resource, I thought it imperative to make sure it deserved the attention that would come to it through adoption of this amendment. When we talk about geothermal, very few people are aware of this. The benefits of geothermal are significant, and the labor force that would effectuate it are the same labor force that is in hydraulic fracking. Many of these projects, when we're talking about electricity generation, will occur in rural districts. And my amendment puts priority on those facilities and properties that could best benefit it in ways that help taxpayers, specifically state property, brownfields that are a blight to communities, both rural and urban. And my hope is that I can get the full support of this committee on this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Rabb. And it's my understanding there is some language on pages 15 and 16 of the bill that may already cover geothermal, but I do understand that this would specifically put a section in the bill to say that geothermal energy is certainly a kind of energy, a kind of sustainable energy that we could make sure that these tax credits apply to. I have a question from Representative Gatos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm reading the amendment here, and look, I'm all for all of the above sorts of energy, but I see here it applies to, it says a tax credit equal of 30% of the capital investment in the project facility up to a maximum of $5 million per year, and then it says eligible geothermal site owned or operated by a municipality, county, or Commonwealth agency, which are tax exempt. So how does that tax credit, how would that apply to a tax exempt entity?
Representative Rabb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's a great question. So you have private entities that may be working in partnership with governmental entities on public property. So imagine putting a geothermal project at a state correctional institution or some other large-scale property. The entities that are doing that are corporations, so they would still benefit. They would be procuring services, or rather the state agency would be procuring services of those private contractors. So it would actually save money, because imagine anything like a college campus, a PASHE school, a state prison, a municipal complex, and you have geothermal. Those contractors would be private.
Okay, so but this specifically says owned or operated by a municipality, county, or Commonwealth. I guess operated, but owned and operated, I'm not sure that.
Not the contractor. The contractor doesn't need to own the property. The contractor creates the geothermal system for the benefit of a state property. But that's just one of several. It doesn't have to meet all of these requirements. That's just one.
So it sounds like there probably needs to be a correction to the bill to clarify that.
I'm not sure.
If I might add, we have a definition of the site starting on line 13, but the facility is defined as on line 28, which would be the facility that would be eligible for the tax credit. And the qualified taxpayer down on line 33 operates one of those facilities. So the private company would have the facility, but the site is being defined earlier on line 13.
So it's the private company that gets the tax credit.
Yeah. Doing work on the site, but down on line 33, the taxpayer operates a facility, and on the next page, you see the taxpayer is the one getting the tax credit.
Yeah, I personally would like to see a greater clarification on that. Seems kind of confusing.
Chair Greiner?
Yeah, I understand the intent. I have macro, I have no problem with the amendment. Micro, I do think there's some confusion. I think there's some confusion. I mean, I know what you're trying to say too, but we might all be in agreement on intent, but the way that it's written, I'm not quite sure it's where we want it to be. That's my thinking on that. So I'm inclined to vote yes for it, but I would like to. I'm kind of with Val on this, with Representative Gatos. I'd just like to see, That's my only comment.
Well, the concern is that it says the tax credit could be sold or signed. So you kind of wonder what, who is the entity that is trading it.
Yes, many of our the taxpayer would be the one that could reassign, as is the case with many of our tax credits in Pennsylvania. I plan to take a roll call vote on this amendment. I do want to give an opportunity to any other member who has a question. Seeing none, I'd like our senior legislative committee assistant to take the roll.
Chairman Samuelson,
Yes?
Rep. Abney,
Yes by designation.
Sapita Freites, Fleming, Gallagher, Gungauer,
Yes by designation.
Harris, Inglis, Krajewski,
Yes by designation.
Rab, Scott,
Yes.
Venkat,
Yes by designation.
Waxman,
Online, and yes by designation.
Webster,
Yes.
Chairman Griner,
Yes.
DeVanzo,
Yes by designation.
Fritz, Gatos, Jones, Kephart, Kutz,
Yes by designation.
Mako,
Yes by designation.
Rossi, Rinkavich,
Yes by designation.
Stanbach,
Yes.
and Stender.
24 in favor, 2 opposed. House Bill 582 is adopted. Amendment 582 is adopted. Next, I'd like to call up Amendment 557 offered by Representative Mike Jones and ask our senior committee legislative executive director to give a description.
Amendment 557 excludes pumped storage hydropower that uses a change in elevation as a means of hydroelectric energy storage.
Thank you. I want to call on Representative Jones for a description of that amendment. And we had a brief discussion yesterday about this.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. And if you, at the end of this, I'll be concise, but about warrants a few minutes just to explain a situation we have in York and Lancaster, maybe elsewhere. But ultimately, if you want to pull it and we can keep working on it, that's fine. Or I am looking for some counsel. I don't know if there's any benefit to introducing it and voting it down on your side, which I'm okay with, just to make sure we raise the issue. But regardless, as we were reviewing the bill on the Republican side a couple days ago with Chairman Griner, the word storage jumped out at me. And my assumption, which could be a false assumption, maybe a guess is a better word, is that was intended to deal with batteries, which are enablers for solar and wind. We need to confirm that. I'll defer again to you, Chairman, on that. But that term is also used for something, and you had asked me, Chairman Samuelson, I think the way we have the amendment, this is probably as good a wording as there is. You had asked me to make sure that we had the right terminology. I did some research. It looks like it would be to call it a pumped storage plant, or I think it's good to clarify pumped storage hydro plant. But what this is, and we have one already on the Lancaster side of the Susquehanna, and there's one now being proposed on the York side. Little piece of trivia, while it's on the York side, which I represent, not my district, but I'm from York County, Chairman Griner's from Lancaster. There are also a couple of Democrats from Lancaster and York that are opposed to this. Lancaster actually owns the entire river, for what that's worth. Or the entire river's in Lancaster. They don't own it. In any event, what this does is it actually uses more energy than it produces. So you say, well, why would you do that? Well, what they do is they build a dam, but not a traditional hydroelectric dam, which relies on, obviously, the gravity and the drop of the river. They pump the water, and in this case, they would be flooding 1,100 acres of pristine land, which I don't think those on the sort of environmentalist side, I'll call it, would like. Rep. Rab may know more about it than I do. But in addition, as I said, it uses more energy than it produces The reason they do this is they pump it up at night, and I don't know how inefficient it is, but let's say they put in 100% of energy and get 90% back. But they pump it up at night when demand is low, and then they drop it during the day when demand is high. Still arguably serves a purpose, but it's kind of more of a financial play than a clean energy play. And even if we support this, I don't know that we want to be giving grants. I can guarantee you that I'm almost certain, I'm taking the liberty of speaking for a senator and a newly elected rep that I don't know for sure, but based on Rep Sterla in the past and Rep Hill Evans in York, I don't think any of us want to be associated with giving a grant to supporting such a project. It would have to stand on its own merit, and that's. So the last thing, just to bring it to everyone's attention, part of what's driving this, and I don't know to what extent this Cuffs Run proposal would drive new power lines directly, but Maryland, in an attempt to be green, is shutting down plants, the Brandon Shores being the most recent one, rather than converting to natural gas, relying basically on Pennsylvania to then produce more, and in this case, destroy 1,100 acres of our land to send energy to Maryland and Northern Virginia. Northern Virginia being a huge user of power for data centers and the like. That then in turn tears up more pristine farmland, putting these power lines through what is in large part my region. So I won't take up any more time. I'd like us to vote yes on the amendment. Chairman, if you want me to pull it or we want to vote it down and revisit it, I defer to you because I know we'll work with and I know we need to see with the administration. With that said, final comment, there may be other instances where this is a good thing and you're flooding, brownfield site or something. I kind of doubt it. So it may need some refinement and I'm okay with that, but we certainly don't want to be associated with this Cuffs Run project, giving grant money to them. That's the situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Jones. I do have a comment from Representative Greiner, Chair Greiner, and then I also want to speak.
No, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Jones. I will tell you, I think this really awakened us when we saw this this language for Lancaster and York County. You have everybody. It's very bipartisan. You have Democratic County Commissioner. I was in a meeting with Democratic County Commissioner from York County was there, and our Republican commissioners. And as you said at the time, Representative Sterla. I mean, we're very, very worried. There's been a lot of energy and time and money that has gone into that area of York County, which Mike said Lancaster County owns the river, and you have a congressman involved. It's just it's a pretty, but needless to say, it's contentious. And I really don't know who's for the project other than the person that's pushing the project. So I mean that's almost serious. I don't know anybody who's showing support in the public or politically, but I think the way that it was written, as we said, I think in speaking to you, Chairman, that you want to tighten up the language, which I would encourage, so that it reflects. Once again, getting back to maybe the prior amendment, we really want to make sure the intent is what it's supposed to be.
Thank you, Chair Greiner. And yes, I am certainly not in favor of that project. From what I know, it would affect some environmentally sensitive areas that would impact the lower Susquehanna River in both Lancaster and York County. So I would publicly commit to you, Representative Jones, to work on language to tighten this up. The way it's worded right now, as we're reading it, it looks like it would involve all potential projects in the state that would use that technology. And it's possible there are sites in Pennsylvania where this might be appropriate, but I think we can come up with some language before this bill would come to the House floor that would address this more specifically to make sure that this reliable energy tax credit is not going to a project like that.
Thank you. And if you want me to withdraw, I assume you do, I'll be happy to do that. One last comment after my previous last comment. York and Lancaster are doing more than our share, to be clear. We have multiple dams there on the Susquehanna. We have the Peach Bottom nuclear plant. Again, one of these hydro pump stations already exists on the Lancaster side, and we've got, I think, at least a couple of natural gas plants now on the York side. maybe more on the Lancaster side. So, we're all for energy and, doing our share, but, kind of enough's enough here, especially when a lot of it's being driven by what we consider to be Maryland's irresponsibility in this case. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Jones. And Amendment 557 is withdrawn for now, and we will work together on coming up with some appropriate language. And now I'd like to call up Amendment 566, sponsored by Representative Stender, and ask our committee executive director, Mark Foreman, for a description.
Amendment 566 redefines some of the provisions in the milk processing tax credit, as well as changes the calculation of the credit.
Thank you. I'd like to call on Representative Stender for discussion.
Thank you, Chairman Samuelson. Today I offer Amendment A00566. I think this amendment would make common sense changes to the dairy processing section of House Bill 500. I think these changes will also help small to mid-level processors to be able to utilize the program by lessening their fiscal and administrative hurdles that currently exist in the bill. This amendment also changes the unit in which milk being processed is measured for the program. While we typically purchase milk by the gallon in the store, producers sell and process it by the hundredweight. So again, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to offer my amendment, and I'd appreciate an affirmative vote.
Thank you, Representative Stender. I do have a concern about the amendment, and perhaps I could work with you going forward as well. The amendment, I know we're talking about measurements for the milk processing facilities, and also hurdles and about establishing new facilities. One concern in reading the amendment is that we wonder if it could open the tax credit up to existing businesses when the intent of the EDGE bill is to attract new development in semiconductors, in aviation, in dairy. So we wonder if we need to adjust the language, tighten it up in the future. And so I'm not comfortable with the amendment right at this point, but I'd like to open it up to further discussion among committee members. An example, we just did on the 3 Mile Island some language just to make sure it's not for an existing project that's already going forward, but for future projects. Do we have a discussion?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Stender.
On the amendment?
Chairman, I think we agree that it doesn't open it up to existing projects. Even as written now, it would be new projects within the Commonwealth. I don't think there's any intent for current projects going on or ones that had started prior to, the enacting of this bill.
Any other discussion from committee members?
What do you want me to, you want to work with him on it, or what would you like?
Thank you. Appreciate Representative Stender offering this amendment. I'll tell you what, let's I'd like to call on Representative Stender.
Chairman, because of some of the concerns you pointed out, I think you and the committee have worked very graciously so far to this point. I'm willing to withdraw my amendment as long as we can work towards something that maybe we can find some common ground as we, on second consideration.
Thank you, Representative Stender. And yes, I do want to work with you. Some of the feedback that I'm getting is that this might apply to existing projects, but I think we could make that clear in the language of this amendment. So I appreciate that. House Bill Amendment 566 is withdrawn for today, and we will work together to work on this language. Now before us, we have the bill as amended, and I'd like to open it up to committee discussion. Representative Gatos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm generally very supportive to try to do anything to bring companies and business into Pennsylvania. But as we've been sitting here talking about this particular bill, it's a pretty big bill, and there's a lot of tax credits in here. We want to open it up to a lot of folks, but I guess my first question is what is the total amount of money that is it capped per year, and what are the projects? I believe it's $100 million per project, but where's the money coming from?
Thank you. There is a fiscal, the Department of Revenue has issued a fiscal analysis of the bill. Certain parts of the bill, like the semiconductor, the $10 million is already budgeted from 2022. The hydrogen hubs was $50 million back in 2022. It's now $49 million in smaller components. The milk processing tax credit was 15 in the current law and still 15. The aviation fuel is a new part of this bill, and that's limited to $20 million. And the reliable energy tax credit, each project is defined with what tax credit, but there is no cap on that part of the bill.
So I'm generally favorable to putting money back in the hands of businesses to do this, and I'm very favorable for the a tax credit to sustainable aviation fuel. Clearly, I have the Pittsburgh Airport in my district, and I see that as a great opportunity to provide that tax credit. So, and primarily because they're actually using the feedstocks like ethanol and stock from coal mine methane. So I think that's very positive. However, I think that this bill, in my opinion, given a lot of the discussion here, is perhaps maybe not ready for prime time, and we need to work on some of the clarifications and definitions on this to make sure that we are truly using the taxpayers' dollars wisely when they put it back in the hands to business. So I think I'm going to be a no at this point.
Thank you. I want to amend my remarks. The new component of the bill, the RAB amendment for geothermal, that has a cap of $40 million. So 6 components of the bill, and those are the caps. I think we have some discussion from Representative Fritz.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would like to comment on House Bill 500 as amended. Mr. Chairman and colleagues, as I read through this bill and I study the analysis, I see certain words, descriptors such as sustainable or clean or reliable. And it's frustrating that I happen to have a resource, a feedstock in the 111th that meets all that criteria, but it is conspicuously absent from this legislation. And friends, that is natural gas. For some reason, this state, this Commonwealth, consciously ignores the gas potential, the natural gas potential. We have responsible natural gas development occurring in my district. It has been occurring for 15 years. And I will also note that my natural gas in the 111th is the cleanest baseload energy source on the planet. It is 40% cleaner than Russian-sourced natural gas. But again, it confounds me that this administration and many of my colleagues continue to ignore the potential. We reject that potential, and as a result, we have neighboring states that are effectively eating our lunch. And again, without this very critical factor, natural gas being included, I'm going to go ahead and be a negative on this legislation. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Representative Fritz. Any other discussion from committee members?
Just a few words.
Chair Greiner?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Yeah, just in closing, and going back to Representative Gatos, I think from a macro level, I think we're trying to deal with a lot of good things here and the way we do things around here is through tax credits. Not sure I necessarily think that's the best methodology. In fact, I don't think it is. But I also would say, too, whether it's election law reform or anything like that, I do think when you try to combine multiple things inside one bill, I think it becomes somewhat problematic. And like I said, I appreciate Chairman Samuelson's willingness to work on quite a few of these bills to help clear up the language. And so I think overall, my sentiments kind of echo Representative Gatos, and I'm going to be a no on this until we can. I think we need to clean up some language, and we need to look at other, maybe even as my prior colleague said, maybe we need to take a look at the natural gas as well, and I mean even coal possibly. You know, there's new technologies in that as well. I'm just saying we maybe need to think a little bit bigger, but appreciate certainly the intent. But I think at this point I'm going to be a no vote.
Thank you. And I'm planning to vote yes and encourage the committee members to vote yes on House Bill 500, the EDGE tax credit proposal. The acronym stands for Economic Development for a Growing Economy. As we heard in the hearing and as we heard this morning, we're trying to attract development to make Pennsylvania a leader in economic development. And the bill includes several components, as was stated. We're looking at reliable energy investment. We're looking at milk processing. We're looking at clean hydrogen hubs. We're looking at semiconductor manufacturing, sustainable aviation, and also geothermal energy. Each is an important step forward for Pennsylvania, and I encourage the committee members to vote yes on House Bill 500 and advance this bill from the Finance Committee so we can consider this during our budget discussions. I'd like to ask our committee senior legislative assistant, Lori Smith, to call the roll on House Bill 500 as amended.
Chairman Samuelson,
Yes.
Rep. Abney,
Yes by designation.
Sapita Freites, Fleming, Gallagher, Gungauer,
Yes by designation.
Harris, Inglis, Krajewski,
Yes by designation.
Rab, Scott, Venkat,
Yes by designation.
Waxman,
Online and yes by designation.
Webster.
Yes.
Chairman Griner,
No.
DeVanzo,
No by designation.
Fritz, Gatos,
No.
Jones, Kephart, Kutz,
No by designation.
Mako,
No by designation.
Rossi, Rinkavich,
No by designation.
Stanbach,
No.
and Stender.
House Bill 500, as amended, is reported from the Finance Committee by a vote of 14 to 12. And with no other business today, this meeting is adjourned. We will meet again next Wednesday, May 14th.
Yeah.